Mystery religions, cults. Many people assume that these are things that only happen in Hollywood movies. Bloodlettings and rituals. Though, like everything else, real life is often way more interesting than fiction. Now, the star of our show, Magdalena Solis, was born in northern Mexico in the city of Tamaulipas in 1947. At a very young age, disgustingly, Magdalena used to work as a prostitute for her older brother Elazar, a local pimp in the area. However, things would take a drastic turn when they would eventually come into contact with the Hernandez brothers. The Hernandez brothers were two up-and-coming Mexican con men, and they had decided that they would start up a new con adventure. Essentially, they wanted to establish their own church with both of them as high priests of this odd, exiled Incan god theology they came up with. Now, the village that they targeted for this scheme was Yerba Buena, a small, isolated rural town of about 50 people, all of which were illiterate. Essentially, the brothers had convinced the people of this town that if they gave them worship, wealth, power, and did whatever they asked of them to do, that they would grant them hidden wealth that was supposedly hidden in the mountains and hills around the area. It worked for a while, of course, but eventually the villagers thought, we're giving these people worship, we're doing what they ask us to do, but we aren't being given any of that gold. So their little trick started to wane. And this is where the Hernandez brothers would recruit Magdalena Solis, who they would meet in a nearby larger town. Now, they would recruit Magdalena to serve as their Incan goddess, essentially. They gathered all the villagers up into this cave, and they used a bunch of practical magic tricks and like a smoke screen, smoke bombs, fireworks, and then Magdalena burst through as this goddess. So Magdalena, right after this, thought, I'm the goddess. Why do I need these high priests? And she sort of took control of this whole cult, swept it right from under the control of the brothers. But they didn't really care. So the villagers fell for her act. And in a way, interestingly, so did Magdalena. She had never really had this kind of power, this revered respect before, and it really went to her head. She believed, Magdalena, that as she was a goddess, she required blood sacrifices to maintain her youth as well as to maintain a living. She thought that it was like a requirement to continue living. These human sacrifices were two men that had planned on leaving the village, but the Hernandez brothers found out and told their goddess. So she had them killed and she tore their hearts out, full-on Indiana Jones style. One summer night in 1963, a small local teenager from one of the nearby towns was hiking or walking around the mountains near Yerba Buena, where he started hearing these strange noises and saw these weird lights coming from a cave. He decided to investigate, and as he got closer and closer, these almost started sounding like human screams. And when he peered in, he bore witness to the middle of one of these sacrifices. And not knowing what this was, he immediately bolted and ran 10 miles to the closest police station in the area. When this young boy told the Mexican police what he saw, he just said they were vampires or demons, because he had no idea what, he could not comprehend it. They kind of just brushed him off and took him back home. But he just couldn't sleep. He had to see this again. So he went to the police station again the next day, and one of the police officers decided that he would actually assist this boy and walk with him. Then later on, when both of those two men were considered missing, declared missing, the Mexican authorities kind of thought maybe something was actually going on. And as they did not have the actual resources to go on a manhunt themselves, the law enforcement actually contacted the Mexican army to investigate. When the Mexican army had finally arrived, they saw a completely abandoned ghost town, because Magdalena had sort of caught word of what was happening and had all of her cult members and villagers move into the nearby cave system, and they fortified and barricaded it, anticipating a full-on firefight. Now, despite her delusions, thoughts and prayers did not beat the Mexican army, and they were able to force their way through the barricades, arresting the majority of the cultists, taking very light casualties, if any.